Hi, I'm Kent. Let's make a giant pot. Over the past couple of years, almost all of my pots I make are slip cast. However, when I started, I actually was hand building my pots. Recently, I picked up some houseplants that have some rather large but ugly looking plastic pots. I want to go ahead and make some ceramic pots to put the plants in. The challenge is that since these are relatively large, they're about 10-inch pots, I can't slip cast them. Well, maybe I could, but I really don't want to make a plaster mold that big. So I'm going to pull out my clay and the associated supplies, and let's build some giant planters. So here is my clay. Most of my clay comes in powdered form, and I use that to do slip casting. I mix it with water and Darvan 7. However, I do keep some throwing clay around. This is Laguna B mix. I suspect this is not going to be enough, but I have some more laying around if I need it. So to hand build, what I'm going to need to do is roll out thin slabs of this clay. So I will open it up, cut it off, and then roll it flat. To roll it flat, I have this piece of dowel which I use to roll. I also have this canvas here, which I can use to roll on. That way I can move around the slabs of clay. I also have some scrap pieces of lumber here. I can use these as spacers so I can roll the clay out to a consistent thickness. As I mentioned, I have 10-inch pots. So they are 10 inches in diameter and about 10 inches tall. So I need to make pots that are larger than that so I can get the plants into them. My clay shrinks by about 15% or so, which means I need a pot that's at least 12 inches big. And so to help with that, I just printed out on a couple pieces of paper a template. So this black line here is 12 inches, so I want to make sure my pot is at least that big. I probably want to give myself a little bit of margin, just in case. Too big is okay, too small is problematic. So we'll use this as well. Let's go ahead and get set up. First I'm going to put down this canvas. All right, there we go, laid it all out. This brings back some memories. I have not used this in quite literally years at this point. Put the wood down so that I have my spacers, and the idea is I want to fill this area up with clay. And by the looks of it, I basically want to go from edge to edge. So I can take some slabs of clay, put it down, and then I'm going to roll it back and forth. All right, so I got my wire tool, and we'll just cut off a good chunk. I think I want to get a couple inches actually, so that way I can spread it out. I suspect this is probably not the best clay to hand build something this big, but we'll make it work. Something grogged would probably be a little bit easier. And I'm just going to roll this out. If I had a sturdier table, I'd probably just throw this against the table, but if I do that, it would be very loud, but it would also make most of my cameras move around, and that would just cause you guys to be seasick. It's also cold, so clay is a little bit firm. Just knead it out here. And already I can tell I'm going to need much more than that. I'm going to keep rolling this out. Let's check back when I have a slab rolled out. All right, I have been flipping this over and rolling it out some more. It is a pretty even thickness, not exactly uniform. And I've taken my scraper here and scraped it down to compress it. And here is my template, so we're big enough. So I want the inside of the pot to be this line, and I want to give myself some margin. So I'm going to go hefty 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 inch here on the outside of my template. All right, there we go. That's going to be the bottom of the pot. Smooth this out a little bit more. Now what I need to do is start building up the walls. And I think I'll probably only go a few inches, and then we'll go ahead and cover this up, let it firm up a little bit more, and then go from there. This may be thicker than I want. It's probably a good 1/2 inch, but I can always carve it down later if I need to. So I'm going to take my cutoffs here and then thin them out just a little bit, and then I'll cut these into strips and we'll start building up the walls. So take these and start wrapping them around. Use some really fat coils here to make sure the bottom's well attached to the walls. Start building it up layer by layer. So I'm going to make these thicker than I need to, and I can pinch them together. Check against the template before I get too far. So it's looking pretty good. I've got a good maybe inch of margin. So the pot will be plenty big enough. All right, I think I'm gonna do one more layer. Then I'll probably let it sit and dry for a while. This is very fresh clay, as you can tell. Just going around feeling for the spots that are a little thin. Or thinner. No, this is thin. Really just trying to compress the clay together at this point. I'm not really worried about the finish. That will come later. So one thing I noticed, I'm starting to flare out, which I don't need. The walls can be pretty much straight up. So I think I'm going to make a cut, take out a chunk. Same thing over here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and work this a little bit more, see if I can get the seams to come together, and then I will stop, let it firm up for a little while, and we'll go from there. All right, it's been several hours now, and this has firmed up a little bit. I think the first thing I want to do is try and get it off of the fabric here and onto a bat so I can move it around a little bit easier. I'll scooch it over. I have a bat here that I think is about the right size. Perfect. So now I can twist it around. See how I did on the side that you guys were watching. So now let's do another layer or two. A little bit left of my original clay I rolled out. We're going to need more for sure. All right, get out the other bag of clay. So I think for this one, I'm going to, instead of roll it out, just try and cut off pieces that are about the right thickness. So I'm squishing it down anyways. I'm going up and down as well, so I'm trying to add in the short spots. We're definitely growing out again, but I think that'll be okay. So basically what I'm doing is just trying to compress the clay really well, so there's not any air gaps in it. I think I'm going to cut another wedge out. Try and bring it back more into round. All right, I think that's probably all I want to do for today. I am maybe halfway for the height. I'm going to let it firm up a little bit. I'm going to cover this up. I want the water levels to really equalize within this. I don't want it to dry too much on the outside. It's a very thick piece. All right, I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll probably pick this up for me tomorrow, for you, just in a second. This has been covered up and drying for a while now. Let's keep going up. Slicing off layers and cutting out some strips seems to work pretty well, so I'll keep doing that. All right, and I'm buckling again, so I'm going to cut it. As I'm squeezing it thinner, it also means that in addition to going up, it's going out. All right, we're going to go up a few more inches. All right, I think we're getting close. So there's my template. We've definitely grown in size a little bit. I keep slicing the walls and folding it back in as I keep making it more bowl-shaped. In terms of height, 12, I think we're maybe a little bit short. So it's getting pretty floppy, but I think I want to go ahead and do one more layer. That way I can trim it and be nice and even. All right, last layer. Okay, I think we got it big enough that you can't really see anymore. There's the top now. Let me go ahead and reposition you. We are now to the bottom, say 13.5, and we are maybe 14 wide. So I've definitely overshot the 12 inches that I wanted, so that's good. I'll have some extra space to play with. I will also want to scrape and smooth this out. I am going to cover this back up, and once it gets a little bit firmer, we can work on getting it closer to its final shape. Right now, I think this is still pretty rough. That will likely take a day or two, so let's come back to it then. It's been a few days and I have alternated leaving this covered and uncovered. The only thing you missed along the way is I went ahead and I cleaned up the sides a little bit. At this point, I want to get the walls a little bit more smooth and uniform. And I have no idea how I'm actually going to do that. There definitely are some high and low spots. So I think what I want to do is use this as a straight edge to try and pull the high spots off. All right, I'm gonna keep doing that all the way around. I've gone around and I stripped off a little bit, and then I just took a damp sponge and I've been going around, and you notice it's spinning. I don't actually have a banding wheel, but I do have a cheap kind of cake decorating wheel. So it's a little bit wobbly, but it spins okay. It's definitely not completely even, but it might be as close as I'm gonna get. The top's still in pretty rough shape, and I need to trim it, so let's do that next. So let's try and like trim off of a solid ½ inch. All right, I think I've scored most of the way around, so I'm going to use my needle tool and dive in. All right, all the way around. Let's see how I'm doing with the height. 12.5, 12.5. That looks pretty good. I'm not too sure how even I am. I'm pretty sure not very. Let's start to smooth this out. There's a few spots here on the top of the lip that are a little thin, so I'm going to take some fresh clay, try and beef them up. All right, I've got those edges kind of patched up with some fresh clay. It's going to have to dry and then I can smooth it back out. At this point, I think I've added enough moisture to the outside that I want to stop again. I'm going to have to try and flip this guy over because I want to put feet on it as well. So that'll be an adventure. The inside is still kind of rough. I'm deciding how much I want to mess with that. There's going to be plant and dirt and stuff inside of there, so I'm not particularly worried about it, but I think I do want to smooth it out a little bit more. At the very least, I think by smoothing it out, I can minimize where there might be potential stress fractures. It's been a few more days and my pot's getting a little bit drier. It's getting to the point where it's hard to frame it for you guys. It is a little bit large, to say the least. This is definitely the largest thing I've made by a long shot. Since last time I was playing with it, I went ahead and smoothed down the sides a little bit more, and I did a shot at the inside as well. The inside's still a little bit damp, but it's starting to come along. And the rim is getting into better shape. I think what I want to try and do now is flip this thing over. The bottom needs to be trimmed, and I'm going to want to add some feet. And before it gets too dry down there, I want to be able to attach them. The hard part is I don't actually have a wear board big enough to capture the top. I do have a piece of pretty heavy-duty corrugated cardboard that I think might work. So let's try that. So here's the piece of cardboard hanging off back here. And basically what I'm going to do is put it on top and then try and flip this whole thing over. All right, let me go ahead and do this off camera. All right, got it upside down. That was a bit of an adventure. So now what I'm going to do is start to clean up the bottom here. How's that side look? I can't quite see it. All right, so there is a rough shape. I'm going to go ahead and smooth that out a little bit later. I think I want to go ahead and smooth out the bottom here a little bit as well. All right, so there's a first pass at getting the bottom into shape. I think it'll need to dry a little bit. The other thing I want to do at this point is go ahead and make some feet. So I just got a hunk of clay here, and I'm going to want to roll it out a little bit. So I think I want 3 feet. I'm gonna make it a triangle, so hopefully it's reasonably balanced. I'm gonna cut this into thirds. All right, so there's 3 feet that I just chopped out. And I think the idea is to try and put them on the top here. And then space them out somewhat evenly. I want them inset. All right, so this clay is pretty wet, and this is definitely firmed up, so I definitely want to slip and score this. So I'm going to trace out where they go. Score this up. The other thing I do is score the bottom side here. This side's really wet though, so I'm not too worried about it. And I got a little slip here. And I'll take each of these and put them into place. Take something flat and push down a little bit and get them seated. I'll make some coils. Push into the edges. That's the first pass of the feet. They are definitely going to need some more work, but they're also going to have to firm up some more. So I think what I'm going to do is cover this and let these parts dry out and see if the moisture content can homogenize again, equalize, and we'll go from there. All right, the feet have set, and I just cleaned them up a little bit using my rib tool and smooth them out a little bit. They're still a little bit soft, but I think they're okay. What I really want to do is now flip this back right side up. I think the feet will support it, and if there's a little bit of unevenness, hopefully the weight of the pot will help smooth it out. All right, wish me luck. Oh. And we are back right side up. So I think I messed up the wall a little bit when I flipped it over the first time. Oh yeah, let me work on that a little bit. It is not quite smooth, but I think for the first thing that I've hand built in a very long time, and the first thing I've built this big, we are in pretty good shape. So I'm going to try and maneuver this into the shelves behind me so I can let it sit and dry for a while. It's been several more days and the pot is drying out even more. In the intervening time, I've gone and I've worked on smoothing the sides out. They still have this wave in and out a little bit, but the surface finish is much better. To do that, I basically went with a metal scraper and just scraped off the edge. Went around, did that a few times. Then I have a Scotch-Brite that I went and used and kind of smoothed out some of the edges. The sides I think are in pretty good shape. The bottom is a little bit rough, but I think I'm starting to get a crack, so I don't want to work with it too much. It's also getting to the point where it's dry enough that I am really afraid that it will crack. So I'm going to flip it over one last time, do one last check, and then I'm going to put it on the shelf to dry the rest of the way. I'm actually going to be heading out of town, so it'll dry one way or the other while I'm gone. So let's go ahead and see if I can flip it over. All right, there we go. Made it over without incident. So I think the rim is looking pretty good as well. I'm definitely spoiled slip casting things and having them come out very smooth and even. It looks like I'm getting a little bit of a stress crack here as it's drying. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I can see it in real life. So hopefully that doesn't open up anymore. If it cracks, it's not the end of the world, but I really don't want it to crack all the way through because I'm hoping this will be watertight. I think this is good to go, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on the shelf and we'll let it dry out the rest of the way. I was out of town for about a week and the pot has continued to dry. Let's check it out. One of the first things I noticed is that I've got a crack in the bottom here. So it goes from here to the other side. I'm going to fire it like it is. I don't know if there's any real options to fix this besides starting over, and I really don't want to do that. The surface is pretty good. There's definitely some divots and defects on the outside, but I'm just going to live with that. It's definitely a handmade pot. The feet seem to be holding up just fine. So with all that, I think I'm going to go ahead and put this into the kiln for a bisque firing.
There we go, it fits. Let's close it up and I'll start the bisque. This pot has been a bit of an adventure. Will it turn out? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm going to go ahead and bisque this overnight, and for you, it will be the next video. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thanks.